Hi Asheesh, it's a pleasure to have the time to talk to you today. I'm here with Asheesh Mehra from Infosys, and we've just come right off the stage from the G6 panel for 2012. Asheesh, that's not your first time on the panel, so you're no stranger to the debate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and today was a lively debate. From my point of view, it focused heavily on making a choice between captive and outsourced models. So I'm interested to ask you right off the bat, do you think that's a debate we still need to be having?
I really don't think so, Jackie. We need to be having that debate. We've been talking about captive versus outsourced for a while now, and really close to a decade if you really think about it. And I think while for some people out there, it's a valid conversation. It's an emerging economy, across Asia Pacific, and they really want to understand where they need to be heading, whether a captive strategy or an outsourcing strategy. Now that said, it goes back to what I've always been saying for a while. It's really critical to choose the right operating model. That said, I think there's enough evidence out there that both work, both bring value to each other's organizations. And in my view, and I've said this last year and I'll say it again, is I think a combination or a marriage between a captive and a hybrid, and an outsourcing play makes more sense, which I'd like to call the hybrid. A hybrid really adds value to a captive organization in areas that they are still learning or challenged for skill sets. They can leverage the experiences that a third-party service provider brings to the table with all the experience they've had from different parts of the world. So in my view, hybrid's the way to go.
You're obviously very passionate about hybrids, Asheesh. I know you're a big fan of that model, and as you say, you brought it up last year and we discussed a little bit in today's panel. What does a best practice hybrid model look like in your eyes?
So, it's not one size fits all, for a hybrid model. I think one needs to really take two steps back and really understand what is the key drivers of an organization looking to either do a captive or to go third party and outsource their various functions, right? So if I take that two steps back and I look at it, is cost the driver? And we talked about that today. Is skill set the driver? Is really bringing more efficiency into the organization and making it a more leaner, meaner organization the driver? Or are there other drivers that could be specific to certain marketplaces? Or are organizations looking to enter new markets and they don't want to really invest that CapEx dollar? They want a quicker time to market, increase speed to market, and that's one of their drivers. So I think you've got to take those two steps back and really evaluate what is that organization looking to do, and then go down the path of saying, here's an operating model for you that will work. The answer may not be a hybrid, or it may be a hybrid. You may think it may be a 70-30 mix or a 50-50 mix. So you really have to understand the drivers. There is no one size fits all. That said, I really think that organizations need to leverage service providers to deliver either processes or to deliver transformation, and not really go and reinvent the wheel and relearn everything that we've been through for the last few decades in delivering services to organizations around the world. So they really need to leverage the expertise we bring to the table, and they also need to understand what their drivers are to select from that list of expertise what they'd want to leverage.
Yep, I agree. I couldn't agree more, Asheesh. And I'd actually like to pick up on your point there around transformation. Why do you think hybrids are a driver of strategic transformation? And second to that, why and how do they actually deliver more innovation above and beyond a fully captive or fully outsourced model?
So Jackie, if you had 5 people to answer this question, you'd probably get 5 different answers. And my view is that a captive organization can only do so much, because they are still leveraging off what they have built within their organizations. All right, they're not exposed to various business processes, various different platforms, and different ways of doing things around the globe. They're in some way very sheltered, very siloed, and they're not privy to what really is happening out there in the big bad world of outsourcing or shared services, if you may, right? And that's where they need to really partner, I would say, with service providers who can bring the best-in-class technology without a large capex impact to them. They need to really leverage third-party service providers to bring in best-in-class processes or benchmarks that kind of tell them where they sit as compared to their peers on every one of the service lines that they're looking at putting into their captive. So let me take an example here, right? Whether you look at a finance and accounting process, which is extremely commoditized today, or you move up the value chain and you look at procurement, right? Today, organizations think they have the best deals in procurement, whether direct or indirect, and nobody can get them a better value for what they're procuring. Push the service provider, go down the path of a gain-sharing model, which is no risk to you, which is really leveraging a third-party service provider's capabilities in that space, and let them deliver, real tangible results that really is not impacting them because it's a gain-sharing model. They're sharing the gains that the service provider is bringing to them. So is it CapEx? No. Is it really OpEx? No. What is it? Do you need a business case? The answer is no. So you really need to leverage third-party service providers and bring in that rigor and discipline within the organization of driving metrics. And people say, oh, we've got SLAs in place. It's not SLAs that we're looking for. We're looking at moving from operational metrics to business metrics. We're looking at how can we impact the top line and the bottom line of an organization. How can we impact market share of an organization? So there are multiple areas that a third-party service provider will bring to the table that probably a captive is not even looking at. The captive is looking at delivering a very lean and mean service, but what next?
Well, let's talk about next. You've said that the presence of a vendor can keep the captive honest. What did you mean when you said that?
And we got a few frowns from the audience when I said that. But what I meant by that is really when a captive is plugging away and doing various functions for their organizations, and they've built a really well-oiled machine from a shared services perspective, a captive needs to realize that, as I said earlier, they're kind of in a bubble in many times, and they're really focusing on only that operational metrics. When you bring in a third-party service provider and you are holding them and the fees and their contract to certain metrics that they need to deliver, third-party service providers push the envelope. Try to make sure that they're delivering true value to you. And all I'm saying is, bring both together, let both teams function, and the results will be in front of you. You don't really need to be blindfolded by saying captive is the best model or outsourcing is the best model. I think there's a middle ground. I think we can live in harmony, and I think both have lived in harmony, just as we heard a few examples in the room where captives have used the services of third-party service providers to deliver value in areas that they don't have true capability or the skills available. So it's a long list of areas that you could go into, like skills, like capability, like domain knowledge, right? Understanding the marketplace, reducing time to market, and I could go on of where captives can really leverage the expertise. And if I look at the last 12 to 18 months, I can list for you more than 20 captives that have changed their strategy of staying only captive to moving to a hybrid kind of scenario and leveraging the expertise of a third-party service provider.
So it all comes back to your original comment around it's a marriage.
It's a marriage.
It should be a marriage. So to sort of summarize some of your points there, Asheesh, we've talked about the importance of leveraging third-party suppliers, the importance of understanding drivers as well as business metrics.
That's right.
And finally also the importance of benchmarking. Are there any other comments that you'd like to make as a summation or a final commentary?
As I said, to wrap up the whole G6 panel, I did say think about your operating model. I think that's really important in this geography in Asia. Think about how you can leverage the cloud. I think that's an interesting play out there. And think about going down the path of gain sharing. These were the three closing remarks of mine, and I'll stay with that, because if you pull these three together, I think you've got a winner.
Thanks, Asheesh. It's a pleasure talking to you, and I thoroughly enjoyed today's debate.
Absolute pleasure to be here with you, Jackie, like always.